Hello, friends, and welcome back to Professor Pastor Paul's Midweek Bible Festival. Last week was Easter, and this week we have the post-Easter story of the road to Emmaus. Now, Sarah's going to take us further down the road on Sunday, and she's going to take an approach different than mine. We're going to be looking at the same passage, but she'll be looking at more of it. My passage for this evening, our passage, I should say, for the evening is Luke 24, verses 13 through 27. Sarah will take us further on Sunday. She will actually take us all the way to the table at Emmaus. Here is Luke 24, verses 13 to 27, our text for this evening. Now on that same day, two of them, that is disciples, were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. That is, these events of Easter and the week leading up to it. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him, and he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, Jesus interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. This is our word for the evening. Sometimes you look at things but don't see them. That's our theme, looking at things and not seeing them, yet they are there. That's the promise. Back on the days when I was a professor of astronomy, I used to take students out to the observatory as part of our labs. We also would have public observing nights when folks would come out, look at the telescope, meteor showers, eclipses, comets, what have you, planets. And oftentimes, I would be able to see something easily they couldn't see. A star, or maybe even a dim planet like Mercury. And the reason why they couldn't see it is not because their vision was bad or mine was excellent, but because I knew how to look and see. I knew when you're looking at a rather dim object in the sky, you can't look directly at it. You have to look a little bit to the side of it in order to see it. You have to use your peripheral vision. This is also called averted vision. You have to look a little to the side of the thing, and when you do, you can see it. But if you look right at it, it disappears. This is because of the way our optic nerves are lined with all the rods and cones in the back of our eyeballs. But that's what happens. That's the effect. You have to look to the side in order to see it. And today we have another story about not seeing what's right in front of you, about something being hidden in plain sight. Here in the 24th chapter of Luke, we find two disciples, Cleopas and an unnamed follower, we don't know who, meeting Jesus on the road to Emmaus. We don't know why they're going to Emmaus, but they are going there from Jerusalem, and Jesus meets them on the way. This happens on Easter, so it's a pretty notable meeting. But the two goofball disciples don't see that it's Jesus. He's supposed to be dead, after all. But still, it seems a little strange. If a dear friend of mine showed up post-death, I'd have a hard time believing it, but I'd probably at least recognize them, don't you think? Not these guys. They walk the rest of the way to Emmaus with Jesus, all 7 miles, all the while ignorant of his identity, even as he describes the events of the weekend and of the days leading up to the crucifixion and resurrection. Their eyes were kept from recognizing Jesus. Anyway, they walk on the whole 7 miles, and they tell their new acquaintance, who we know as the reader is Jesus, tells them all about the events surrounding Jesus' trial and death, and they tried to solve the problem posed by his missing body. And Jesus even tells and interprets his own story as they walk, spelling it all out. And the whole time the disciples are trying to figure out what it all means and where Jesus could be. The irony is palpable. Figure as they might, however, they never did come up with anything that made sense, regardless of what they had been told directly, and they never recognized the very Jesus who walked the road with them no more than a few feet away. Their cluelessness fits a pattern. A little earlier in chapter 18, we find Jesus talking to them. Jesus took the 12 aside and said to them, "See, friends." This is chapter 18, verses 31 to 35. He says, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written about the Son of Man," that's him, "by the prophets will be accomplished. For he will be handed over to the Gentiles, and he will be mocked and insulted and spat upon," Jesus says. "After they have flogged him," meaning Jesus, "they will kill him, and on the 3rd day he will rise again." But they understood nothing about all these things. In fact, what he said was hidden from them, and they did not grasp what was said. So the disciples have been at this not getting it thing for a while. Their blindness goes beyond just this event. They were told it would happen. It happened. And now they're being told what happened by the person who told them it would happen and to whom it happened. This, friends, is comedy. This is also us. As we are ourselves not blind to the presence of God all around us. How many of us can say that we see Jesus clearly? Daily. And I would also like to ask, with a bit more of a point, what blocks us from seeing? Because the answer to these rhetorical questions is yes, we ourselves are blind to what goes on around us, to the movement of God around us. One reason we don't see, one thing that blocks us from seeing, is that we don't really look. I went birding yesterday, and I saw a green heron. Most people didn't see the green heron because green herons are inconspicuous. Other people were out, but they didn't see it. Green herons sit out in the open in full sunlight, but they blend in, and they don't move around a whole lot. You just need to know how to look. If you're not aware of the possibility of the green heron, you won't open your eyes to see the green heron. Most people don't look, and therefore most people don't see. They're just not tuned in to that green heron piece of reality. If they looked, they would see it's right there. It's not hidden. They are not in the habit of looking. We may see other things, but they don't see the green heron. Like me and the bird, if you practice looking for the face of Jesus, you will soon see it. And after a while, after you practice for a while, it will become natural and easy, and you won't be able to get through your day without seeing it, the face of Jesus. And of course, looking out for the face of Jesus is a lot more important than looking out for a green heron. Or is it? That's a question we'll debate another day, perhaps. The second thing that blocks us from seeing is that we think we already see. It is tempting always to lean on what we know or what we think we know and not see the truth standing right in front of us. I have a personal story about this. For a number of years, I had a great difficulty reconciling the idea of homosexual relationships and marriage with my faith because I knew all the answers already. They were right there in the Bible. Leviticus 18:22, Leviticus 20:13, Romans 1:26-27, 1 Corinthians 6:9-10, etc., etc., etc. I was not an anti-homosexual activist, but when the issue came up, these are the verses I thought of, and sometimes I brought them up. My biblical principles were securely in place. Then, a number of years ago, maybe 16 or 17 years ago, I was talking with a pastor friend, and we were getting into this a little bit. He got a little exasperated with me, and at one point he said, "Paul, start with the person in front of you and not your principles. Start with the person standing in front of you and not your principles." He said, "Ask yourself, who is this person? What is their story? What kind of light do they shine? Do they exhibit the fruits of the Spirit? And if they do their relationships have anything to do with that?" At the time, I, of course, could not answer because I didn't really know any practicing homosexuals at the time. As I said, this was many years ago and also far away. Since that time, I have come to know many, of course, and trans and non-binary folks as well, and have had many, many opportunities to start with the person standing in front of me, to practice seeing who is standing before me, and to make a habit out of looking for the light they shine and the spiritual fruit they exhibit. And now I have many more friends. What I learned from my pastor friend and from my many non-straight friends is this: you will never see Jesus except in the person right in front of you, except in the person walking right beside you. So always remember to look for him there first. Look for Jesus in the people standing in front of you and walking beside you first. Look there, and then among your principles second. Thirdly, and most personally for me, the third thing that blocks us from seeing Jesus is that we don't really believe we're going to see anything. If you don't believe in the green heron, you will not spend your time looking for it. If you don't believe in the presence of Jesus among those sexual minorities and others, you will never see him there. This is the hard one. You must believe. That is the humdinger. If you do not believe, you will not see. This is a hard and in many ways a long life that we live, and believing in Jesus is not easy. We get beaten down. Sickness and death comes to us and our friends and our families. Darkness, unimaginable, threatens many who are hearing these words right now. Believing in Jesus is not easy, and sometimes it's easier just to stop believing and stop looking at all. And when I say believing in Jesus is not easy, I mean not only believing that your loved ones and friends reflect the love of Christ, but, and this is the rub, believing that the homeless person is Jesus, or that annoying person in your office is Jesus, or that the xenophobe is Jesus, or that embarrassing relative, or that inmate, or that undocumented immigrant who wakes you up with a leaf blower at 7 a.m., these are Jesus. This is the walking and talking presence of Jesus among us. Again, I do believe we make a mistake when we think that Jesus will ever look any different to us than this. These people, those people all around you. And it's very hard to live this way when it's hard enough to believe in the presence of Jesus, of God with us, of Emmanuel at all. We are all of us on the road to Emmaus, and Jesus is with us, I assure you, sisters and brothers, every step of the way. And who is he? Look around. Look out the window at the neighbor walking down the street. Scroll to the TV news on all the stations. Pull up your social media accounts. Look under your own roof or across the political aisle. There Jesus is, waiting to reveal himself to you, walking with us if we will only open our eyes and believe. Amen.